Now I was curious how loud the tool actually would be, even though the documentation said 87.5 decibels. So I wanted to test it out with the sound meter on my phone. Hey, what's up Speedy's Garage gang? Welcome back to the Speedy's Garage YouTube channel. Things are still going really well with our E85 testing on the Hellcat Go Man Go back here. So good to go there. And a quick update on good old Project Sport Runner over here. It's running perfect. That's it. Water method injection is still working great. It's got about 150,000 miles on it now. I have not done the timing belt service on it yet, so that's going to be coming up. I'll probably replace the radiator at the exact same time to avoid that pink milkshake, as they call it, where the intercooler or coolers that run through the bottom of the radiator for the transmission, they'll leak or break, and it contaminates the transmission fluid. I don't live in a really salty area, so fingers crossed I'm not going to have that problem before I get to that service. It's a little ways off still yet. They say you're supposed to do it at 90,000 miles, but I'm at 150, and I've heard of people going way farther than that. It's a non-interference engine, not a big deal if the timing belt does happen to break. In the unlikely event that were to occur, it won't hurt the motor. So just leave me stranded somewhere. Needs new tires, that's coming up. Definitely needs a detail. I've got to get this thing detailed. I'm a little bit sad that it has gotten as dirty as it is. I'm usually pretty particular about keeping cars clean, but I've neglected that. It's a 20-year-old vehicle, and it's starting to have a few small 20-year-old vehicle problems. I work with a buddy of mine sometimes on some 1970 Mopars, and I've got a little bit of experience working with him on some of the things you start to see, you know, panels and vinyl and leather and things start to kind of get some age on them and they start having some issues. So I've got a couple of projects lined up. I'll show you those real quick. So this dude, it's the panel that covers the rear little cargo space. It's starting to kind of get a weird shape to it, and unfortunately you cannot buy these new from the dealer anymore, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to repair this one. And I did get some leather armrests. I haven't quite picked out the color I like best yet. Definitely not this one, probably not that one. It's going to be between these and this guy, and I'm really leaning towards the black. So those are some of the projects coming up for Project Sport Runner. Oh, and I do got one more thing I'm working on. So you guys know, or if you've been following the channel, you know, I usually run a weld race wheel at the track, and they came chrome, or polished aluminum, I guess I should call it. And I had plasti dipped them a flat black to match the Race Star front runners that I run. And I got tired of polishing them and keeping them clean, to be honest. The plasti dip has held up actually really well. It's still on the back. Doing a little experiment where I have peeled off the plasti dip on the front, and I'm going to try a color change. We're going to see how that goes, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully I'll have it ready for Challenger Fest and it'll look nice and fresh. So those few updates out of the way, I'll get to what we're going to talk about today. So I get asked quite often, you know, if I'm getting started working on cars, or what tool should I get to do this or that or the other thing. And a lot of it comes back to experience level and how often you think you're going to work on your vehicle, to be honest. I always looked at tools as, if I do the labor myself, number one, I'm going to know it's done right. Number two, I'm going to learn. And number three, I'm going to take the money I saved on that job, paying someone to do it for me, and I'm going to invest in some tools that I can then use on future jobs to make them easier. And I started off with ratchets and like most people, a few box end wrenches and things like that. When I first started getting into motorcycles, the electric, and they weren't cordless at the time, the electric impacts had just started coming out, and you had to have a cord. So I didn't really see the point in that, so I started getting into a pneumatic, which means it's run with an air compressor impact tools, and I was a little bit, you know, tentative about it. I hadn't been trained on one. I'd never used one very much, never had anybody teach me how to use it, and so I wanted to be careful not to tear anything up. I had a buddy who was friends with the Snap-on guy, and he got us a pretty good deal on a couple of Snap-on brand impacts. I think it was I'll find the part number, I'm gonna call it like a 5100 or something like that. And honestly, I was pretty disappointed in the power of it, number one. And number two, out of all the tools I've owned ever that were pneumatic, and I've had a bunch since then, the only two I've ever had to have repaired were both Snap-on brand. Maybe I just got unlucky, I don't know. I eventually sold the Snap-on Impact when the cordless ones got a little bit more cost effective and actually were cordless and just battery powered at that time. And I still have one Snap-on butterfly impact. I'll show that to you real quick just so you know that I am For real, here it is. Hardly ever use it. Bought it because I thought it was cool and I might use it, but honestly I found it kind of awkward to use, so it spends most of its time in the toolbox. It has had to been repaired. Now neither one of the repairs were a big deal. It was mainly the seals and stuff. It wouldn't hold air, it would leak, it wasn't as powerful anymore. But out of all the tools I've ever gotten, the 2 snap-ons had to be repaired. And I've got a whole drawer full of the cordless now. And these brushless, I'll talk more about these later. This brushless has been great. It's a good size, it's powerful enough. And once you kind of get on a manufacturer like DeWalt as an example, you almost get married to them because the batteries are typically specific to the brand that you're using. I might have made a different choice if I were buying these today. Again, I'll tell you more about that later. But sometimes you need more than what a cordless, or at least this class of cordless, can provide. And so I have been using for a little while this dude. It's a Aircat 1150, and I like to get stuff and use it a little bit before I go and tell people about it and say, you know, what I like or don't like about it. I don't just go out and buy it and then come home, take it out of the box and tell you how great it is, because who knows if it's great or not, right? I have used this for a while. It's rare, I'll be honest. It's quite powerful. It's got 3 forward settings and 1 kind of breakaway or break loose setting that makes it easy to use. I haven't heard anything with it, thank goodness, but I only use it when there's a very rusty bolt or something with a very high amount of torque on an axle nut, a crank bolt, something like that are the times I've had to break this out. What I will tell you is, even if you're going to rarely use something like this, it's good to have one in the toolbox, because when you need it, you need it. And it makes your life much, much easier. When I got the red eye engine, I needed this to take the crank bolt out and put the pin to pin it in place. This made that a 5-second job rather than us cranking away with a big pipe or something like that to get that extremely tight bolt out. So I'm going to show you a little bit about this thing and why I picked it up. And I'll put a link in the description where you can get one of these if you end up thinking you can use one. They do have a couple of different sizes. I chose the 1150 because I felt like it was enough for what I would be working on, and it's got a reasonably compact size, even though it would have a hose attached to it, which is a little bit inconvenient compared to a full cordless tool. When you need power, this one can still get into some places to get the job done. Again, link in the description. Comes pretty well packaged, warranty card. It says that this tool actually has to go back to Aircat for warranty service, but it's got a 2-year warranty. Decal and some literature. And they actually put the tool in a pretty nice sack to protect it. So that's what it looks like coming out of the box. I also picked one of these swivel fittings up to go with it. Should make it a little bit easier to use around the vehicles. Installing the quick connect is pretty straightforward. You will need a large crescent wrench and an 11/16 wrench for the quick connect. You probably noticed my quick connect already had some pipe sealant on it, but if yours does not, be sure to use some Teflon tape or something similar. I like that this impact has the hog ring anvil instead of a detent pin, because it makes sliding on and off the sockets much more easy, and they won't come off. But those detent pins, I always have trouble with them getting hung up in the detent hole, and then you have to use a tool to actually get them loose, and it's just annoying and slows me down too much. So these pop on and off pretty easy, but they're snug. I mean, it's not going to just slide off too easy. You know, I'm pulling on it pretty hard there, and it hangs on that hog ring, so it's pretty decent tension. The torque setting is actually the reason I chose this particular impact gun. That and its composite housing made it lightweight. As you guys have seen in some other videos, I have several of the electric DeWalt tools, and they work great, but sometimes they'll struggle with a really rusty bolt. So I wanted something in the shop that I knew would take off just about anything. It's got 1 setting for reverse, and that would give you all 1,295 foot-pounds of torque. It's got 3 for tightening. However, I will rarely, if ever, use this tool to actually tighten a fastener. It's just too powerful, so it's mainly going to be used just to remove things, and then I'll switch over to one of the electrics that I know won't tear anything up to put it back together. And here are the specs that are in the literature. It says it's 87.5 decibels, It has a free speed RPM of 8,000. It expects 90 to 120 psi of air, and that's while it's in use. So with the trigger pulled, it wants to see at least 90 psi of air. A 3/8 inch diameter hose is what's recommended. The working torque 200 to 950 foot-pounds. It weighs about 4.5 pounds, and the max torque is 1,295 foot-pounds. When using powerful tools like this one, you need to make sure you have a good shop air system to feed it. You need about 90 to 100 psi of air pressure while the tool is in use. So I set my shop air regulator to between 100 and 105 psi, and then I test the tool to make sure it never drops below 90. And as you can see in this case, we stayed right about 95 psi, which is great. When setting your shop air pressure, you have to consider the lines the air runs through before it gets to the tool, including hose reels and things of that nature. In my case, that tool was connected to a 50-foot 3/8 hybrid air hose and a 3/4 max line air system. Now I was curious how loud the tool actually would be, even though the documentation said 87.5 decibels. So I wanted to test it out with the sound meter on my phone. Looks like it comes in a little short. 84 decibels is what it read. And that's actually pretty good. It's actually relatively quiet. I don't know that you can tell it on the video, but here in the shop, it's really not that loud. I wish I had something really cool to use this on to show you how good it works, but I don't, not today anyway. So we're going to have to settle for a lug nut. Now you notice I've got it on the gun, I've got it on a long extension, which does reduce the torque. This thing shouldn't have any trouble at all. Make sure we got it in reverse, and we do. Get on there. Hopefully you can see that. That's 110 foot-pounds on those lug nuts. Easy peasy. It works great. Now I did use it. We had trouble getting the supercharger pulley off the Hellcat blower when I did the supercharger swap or the pulley swap a couple of years ago. I'll show you that because it made it a piece of cake. Okay, so I thought we had success, but as it turns out, it was actually loosening the nut or loosening the shaft or something inside on the back of the supercharger, because I made 2 or 3 turns and it didn't feel like the pulley was really getting any looser. And we checked this back nut, even though we had it locked down, it still got loose. So I think there's some kind of coupler or something in here, and you're actually loosening a piece of it on the shaft before the pulley breaks free. We tried 2 or 3 different ways to make that happen and no luck. So I'm just gonna hit it real gently with the impact and try to get it to break that first little tension free on that coupler. So we're gonna get after it with the impact. Ready? So that's how we got it done.
Easy.
Way easier than what we were doing, wasn't it?
Thank goodness for our tools.
Well, thanks for watching. I hope you found the content useful. If you can use a pneumatic impact with a ton of power, this is a really good one to consider, especially for the price. For all of you guys that subscribe and like the videos, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. It does definitely help the channel. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Hit the notification bell so you get notified of future content. Please check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedy's_garage, as well as the website, www.speedysgarage.net. And hopefully, I'll see you out there.